happy Wednesday to the world out there. Happy 5-0 Seahawk Wednesday, gentlemen.
Yeah, that's still awesome.
I gotta be truthful with you. I wasn't concerned when we were down 0-13, or as the British would say, 0-13. That wasn't a lot of points to overcome. But I was definitely worried when we gave up those 2 quick touchdowns after going up 21 to it was like what, 21-13. I was a little worried when we gave those touchdowns up.
That's understandable.
But Ross, that was like your Monday night, I believe. Anytime there's a primetime game, you get like a crazy time start. That's actually kind of beneficial.
Primetime games are the ones I prefer the most because it's a human time to be awake, right?
Right.
I actually remember the game later. I don't have to like rewatch it. Like games that are at 5 o'clock in the morning are the worst. That's the best for you guys. That's the 1 o'clock games. After the time zone changes, it becomes, because we don't change, it becomes 6 o'clock in the morning.
Oof.
Those games are the worst for me because it's too early for me to wake up, but it's too late for me to stay up all night. I watch those games and I literally I enjoy them, but then I fall asleep, and when I wake up, I don't remember them. I have to I remember like who won and stuff like that, but I don't remember like the details and stuff. So I have to like rewatch the game.
Oh, that would be. I mean, if it's a game like the Sunday night game, and again, we took the bye week off because there wasn't a game. Seahawks are back; they're gonna face another team this week. But do you feel as if the way that game ended, the way the Seahawks came back in that fourth quarter, especially in the second half, do you consider that to be a memorable game? Or is that just kind of what this Seahawks year has been like?
Who do we play again?
The Vikings. the fully guaranteed Kirk Cousins Minnesota Vikings.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Mr. Cousins. He's having a fantastic year.
The best of years. But Ross, does a game like that stick out for you?
Like the last one?
Yeah.
The last drive. It's one of my favorite. It's an instant classic, as they say. Because it's a different type. Like in 2012, 2013, Russ would do that, and we were like learning what he could do, and it was a different kind of feeling because even when we had good teams in the past, and we had really good quarterbacks, even I think, but they weren't like that type. They weren't like the pure magic, like the fourth quarter magic wasn't always there. Like, in the holmgren era, if you weren't leading by the end of the third quarter, we weren't going to win the game much, right? Like it was, and it wasn't like anything against like Matt Hasselbeck or anything. That was just like the style of play, right? Like it was a finely tuned machine that had to be on, and when it was on, it was on. We steamrolled it, and when it wasn't, we're in for a long day of slogging. And then maybe we've got a chance, but you learned about the magic. Now that's late career, it just felt different. And again, I never had a doubt either. It was kind of weird watching those like highlight things later on, but I don't know. It was one of my favorite games actually of the Pete Carroll era already. Better than some playoff wins. Just I can't explain why. I just felt like 94 yards always feels awesome for a final drive. Even I don't know. It was just it seemed so cool to me.
Zeb, what about you? When you watch that game Sunday night, it's the last game of the day, and it's the only game on. What was your take? And I feel like Sunday night games are almost better than Monday night games recently, in my opinion.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like thinking about this and trying to decide how to respond. I feel like I've become spoiled because, like, yeah, it was great and it was awesome, but I felt like I wasn't as excited as everybody around me because I just kind of expected it to happen. You know what I mean? I think in like 2012, 2013, that drive would have had me standing up, throwing things around, but because I'm so used to them being able to pull that off, I was calm. I was like, I got this. I'm more.
That's what I think is really interesting about the Seahawks as a whole. At no point, and especially it's interesting because the announcers were talking about it like throughout the game. They were talking about Russell Wilson's fourth quarter comebacks. They were talking about all of his late game heroics, and they showed him in like this higher echelon of football comparative to everyone else. It's kind of almost storybook, I guess you could say.
Yeah, it's
I mean, there was
legendary.
I mean, and that's the only thing that makes me a little bit nervous. I don't want them to go overboard from observing and seeing the magic to it becoming a sort of built-in narrative. I hate it when like they force stories. This story, Russell Wilson's story, is good enough. It doesn't need any embellishment. It doesn't need any forcing. I'm really nervous that they're just going to start, the pre-game and post-game, and it's always going to be, even when it didn't. There's nothing more awkward to me than when there's a narrative that doesn't quite match that's on what's on the field, but they push it. It takes away from the player's real ability and real performance, I think. And there's obviously a bit of a ground swelling for Russell Wilson to get the MVP if he's close for it this year because he's never gotten a vote, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just a little bit afraid of people like not letting it just happen organically. Does that make sense?
I think it makes sense because you want to be able to just enjoy the moment and not someone like narrate the whole thing,
Yeah, and not fit what's happening into a preordained story box. I want to just, I want it to feel like how it really is. I don't want it to I mean, this was an organic fourth quarter whatever thing, so that's great. Just don't beat me over the head before it happens. Don't beat me over the head over what happened. Don't put extra stuff in there. Just show me what happened.
Yeah.
And again, like Russell Wilson will give you, he's got a flair for the dramatic, right? I mean,
yeah. I really don't know how else you could kind of characterize that because to your point, Ross, is if it becomes kind of textbook, if it becomes kind of like expected, it's potentially not as fun. It's not as rewarding to see it happen. I definitely was really concerned. Not because I don't think Russell Wilson's capable of doing it, but it's just one of those ideas like, how probable is it that someone can do this again and again and again when the other team is trying to do everything they can to stop him from doing that? The Vikings, they're a 1-5 team, but they're not terrible. They're worse than their record shows, but that's just because they're a poorly designed team. They have bad cornerbacks. They have a subpar quarterback in Kirk Cousins. I mean, I think maybe that's the biggest thing that the takeaway is. Russell Wilson is the kind of quarterback that can do anything you want him to, whereas a guy like Kirk Cousins is someone who has to have everything working well for him in order to look and play his best, right? If he doesn't have his running game, he's not going to be as good. If he doesn't have play action, he's not going to be as good. If he doesn't have amazing wide receivers, he's not going to be as good. If he doesn't have, a great offensive line blocking for him, he's not going to be as good. Any deficiencies in that offense, and he starts to crumble. Whereas Russell Wilson has been playing almost subpar in one facet or another throughout his entire career.
I think we get over it. I mean, it does seem that Kirk Cousins doesn't seem to elevate his game when he needs to, but let's be fair. At the end of the game, we needed a 94-yard drive and everything to go right in it. 2 fourth-down conversions for us to beat Kirk Cousins. So let's not beat up on him too bad. They were one play away, 15 seconds away from beating an undefeated team. So Kirk Cousins is, like you said, he needs help, and that's okay. But yeah, the Vikings seem to make a strategic error when you hitched your wagon and $66 million for 2 years to a guy who does seem to need things to kind of slide right and isn't going to elevate his team as much. But I don't know. Given the time, I mean, they didn't do bad. Like he makes their rookie wide receiver Jefferson into an all-star. That dude's already maybe top 5 in the game or top 10 certainly. I don't want to go too. They were missing the number 1 running back, right? So I don't want to get too down on Kurt. He's doing his best. He's just leave him alone, man. He's all right.
Well, we don't have to face the Vikings. We don't have to face the Vikings anymore, so we can kind of like let it go. I understand. But yeah, the Hawkscast podcast returns after a bye week to bask in the glory of a Sunday night thriller as the Seahawks remain undefeated. Analytics appear to die a little early death as the anti-nerd crowd is saying that the Vikings' fourth down attempt doomed them, when it really was the dynamic duo of Wilson to Metcalf. With this bye under our belts, the team is ready, getting healthier. We're making some additions to the roster, and rumors of another wide receiver potentially coming to town. This is the Hawkscast podcast, and real quick, Antonio Brown has been reinstated by the NFL. Josh Gordon, for whatever reason, has not. He must have kicked a lot of puppies at the NFL office. But Antonio Brown is out there. Adam Schefter is saying that the Seahawks are hot on his trails. He's been playing with Russell Wilson over the summer. Russell Wilson has been a strong advocate for adding anyone and everyone to that offense. Real quick, yay or nay on Antonio Brown?
No, thank you. We don't need him.
And I mean, we clearly don't need him, and I worry about the chemistry, and I worry about this, that, and the other thing. But there's just one thing that gives me a bit of doubt, and that's Russell Wilson wants him.
Yeah.
Russell Wilson probably knows a little bit about football and wide receivers, and not that he's flawless, but players inside the game obviously can sometimes have blinders on. And I mean, you if you're on Twitter, you know that just because you're good at one particular skill at football does not mean you even know football or even know a lot. Sometimes there's a lot of players have boneheaded mistakes, but Russell Wilson seems to be a pretty smart guy.
Yeah.
I do like sort of the message of of forgiveness and growing and encouraging growth. I mean, that's really. I feel like the United States in particular has a very punitive culture. We love to punish people. And that's not. And there's a time and place for punishment. There's a time and place for allowing growth. So I'm neither here nor there on his past mistakes. I'm just talking about purely about football. We don't need him. I worry about, again, the growth of Metcalf being held back. But the thing that gives me pause is Russell Wilson really wants that dude. And I feel like reading his stuff that he wants him 2/3 of the way as the football player and 1/3 as the sort of, I hate to say, sort of like the sort of Christian in Russell Wilson, like this reclamation of the soul. Let's save this guy, save his career, save him as a man, make him a better person. Because he has had that effect, or like the team has had that effect on other players, I think.
I think that's really true. Birdfinger chiming in on the chat, saying that Antonio Brown can sign with anyone after week 8. So we are a little bit of a week away before that can happen. But yeah, I'm kind of with you guys. I question what this would do to the current chemistry of the team, the current belief system that we have, and would it really add anything to this offense? Obviously, adding more weapons is greater because if anyone does take a rest, you've got Antonio Brown. And if you get the Antonio Brown that everyone thinks and wants, that could be amazing. But at what cost, So
do we think that Russell Wilson really wants him, or do we think Russell Wilson is saying the right things and in a form of encouragement? Like you said, he's that kind of guy that just wants to help. Maybe he's just putting these things out there just as like the positive message about Antonio Brown.
That's very possible, but he did do like lots of working out with him, right? I mean, he didn't just talk. He worked with him, and that makes me feel like he's getting the time. I mean, it's Russell Wilson. He doesn't do anything just light. It's part of the message, maybe, but it's also part of the preparation.
Well, let's talk about that, because that actually goes into topic number 1. So, Ross, I want to hit you off with this. Topic number is, what does it say when teams are afraid to give Wilson the ball to close of the game? And one of the things that you asked as we were preparing for the podcast is talking about Russ's positivity, his visualization, his talent, his attitude, his work ethic. A lot of that comes into play, and that means bringing someone like an Antonio Brown in seems like it's just exactly all the things that we know about him. But what does that mean when you're the opposing team and that's what you're facing? Because that's the only reason that I can think of why you would opt for the 4th down instead of kicking the field goal. Because kicking the field goal, it's still a 1-score game with a 2-point conversion, versus if you get that 4th down, the game is over. So I understand from an analytical perspective, like, that's probably the better play. But if you don't convert it, and that's where I think a lot of people fail to understand is when you go for those plays, when you go for those decisions, the goal is to make it, not to like, oh, well, we're okay if we don't make it. What does it say when the Vikings did not want to give them the ball?
I'm not sure I interpret it exactly the way you interpret it, but it does. I mean, there's some of that. I mean, did you see the NFL film video with Russell going up and down the sideline telling his team, like, they know what's going to happen. They know what's going to happen. Did you see that?
He's just like hyping up everyone on that offense.
Yeah. There was two things to me that were a little interesting. One is they also showed the Vikings sideline and like some defensive guys. And maybe I'm projecting a little bit, but again, like they're winning. There's still a 98% chance they're going to win the game at that point. But the look in the defensive players' eyes, there was not, I don't want to say there was fear. That's probably overstating it. But they did not look very confident. You know, you still got 94 yards behind you guys to win this. Like, you got 94 yards to stop us. But they did not look confident when that play was over and they knew they were going to have to go out there and make the stop. So it says a lot about Russell Wilson, obviously. It says a lot about DK Metcalf. It says a lot about Tyler Lockett in general, I think. But yeah, that all goes to the guy who makes it all happen, and that's Russell Wilson. And I mean, I dare say that he's probably already a Hall of Famer. We're 9 years into his career now.
9 years,
yeah. Playoff appearances every year except for one. Is that right?
Well, technically, so here's the thing. Apparently, there's an issue about whether or not he made a Pro Bowl in one of his Super Bowl years because he was in the Super Bowl and he then became like he would have been he played in the Super Bowl, but because he's in the Super Bowl, he can't be in the Pro Bowl.
Yeah, can't. Yeah.
So
well, whatever.
Yeah,
I'd rather have the Super Bowl on my resume than the Pro Bowl anyway.
Right.
I mean, like he's
well, then real quick, I'll ask you this question: if you were the head coach and you have Russell Wilson on the other side, are you kicking the field goal or are you going for that fourth down?
See, I don't believe you can make the decision with that in mind. I mean, you're 1-3. Everything you do as a coach is a message to your team. I go for it, especially with no crowd. Take advantage of this season's uniqueness and opportunities. If the crowd is there and you're near the end zone and you're surrounded on three sides by rabid fans and you can't hear yourself think, then I got to go for the field goal. But this year, where it's dead silent, there's nobody in the stands, and you're 1-3. You need to make something happen. You've got some talent, but more than anything, you seem like you need some leadership and you need some spark and magic. I'd go. And it's not because I'm necessarily afraid of Russell Wilson, because, I am, but I'm not going to admit that. I'm not going to turn to my team and go, you know what? They got Russell Wilson, so everybody just be afraid, because you can't think like that. Like once you're afraid, you've already lost. So you got to just take your shot. When you're 1-3, your odds of and Aaron Rodgers is in your division, and the Bears are overperforming this year. I mean, even Matt Stafford, you got to worry if he's ever going to get hot again. So you're 1-3. You've got some talent. You have to make that call, don't you?
Yeah,
you have to. And again, it probably is about Russell Wilson to some degree, but you can't admit that to your team. You got to look him in the eye and go, "Let's just grab this. Let's win it. Let's take it here." And if they make that, how awesome does the feeling?
Sure. Well, Zeb, what about you? If you're any team that the Seahawks are going to face, and it's a one-score game, and you have a chance, do you, as an opposing team, want Russell Wilson to have that ball?
Of course not. I think that ties into exactly what we were just talking about at the intro of the show. Like, there's a reason why he's had the most game-winning drives in the fourth quarter or overtime since he's been in the league. You know what I mean? Like he's proven time and again that this is what he's capable of doing. If Russell and the Seahawks have the ball last, or with with very little time left on the clock, they're probably going to succeed. They're probably going to have success. So I'm as if I were an opposing team, I would not want the ball in his hands at all. That said, when it comes down to this particular situation, going forward on fourth or kicking a field goal, I'm kicking that field goal because
you're gonna at worst end up in overtime.
Right, and see, now I trust Russell Wilson and the Seahawks to drive down the field and score a touchdown, but they have to score a 2-point conversion, which essentially means they have to score 2 touchdowns in a row, and that hasn't been necessarily the easiest thing for them to accomplish. So in my opinion, kicking the field goal there is the safer bet. Obviously, it doesn't accomplish what converting that fourth down would, but in my opinion, that's the safer bet.
So I'm kind of split. On one angle, I'm with Ross. I feel like because Russell Wilson is across the line of scrimmage, I don't want him to have the ball. I am definitely afraid. And like Ross said, I don't want my team to know that I'm afraid, but I'm shitting my pants because he's done it so many times. And if it were me, I think I would be like you, Zeb. I would actually kick the field goal because, yeah, it's defending 75 yards versus 94 yards, but it's forcing him to score a touchdown and a 2-point conversion versus...
And then you still have a chance. It's not over yet.
Right. And the other thing is, like, if you don't convert, and I know that that's not the mindset. You have to go in the mindset when you make these decisions, you're going to convert, you're going to do it, because you can't make a decision like that and go scared. You have to go and be committed to the play. So obviously, I don't want to talk about the results, but in that moment, I think I would have kicked the field goal because it gives the defense a very clear idea of what they have. Because they did not convert and the Seahawks got the ball, there was so much momentum for the Seahawks. And yeah, there was no crowd, but you could see how hyped, and you could tell that defense, that Minnesota offense, they were definitely demoralized. So I don't know if that's the best thing to put your team in a position where if they can't succeed on something, that it like just deflates them. And I feel like that's kind of what happened to the Vikings. Because that drive, I mean, it wasn't like just 3 plays and they're out. Like, Russell had to work for it. I think the only play that looked easy, I don't even know if you can consider it easy, is maybe that first down run where he basically said, oh, I've got just an open lane up the middle. I'm just going to take these free 19 yards and get out of the end zone, and then we can breathe. But every other play was a scramble, a tough play, or, you know, a combination of just great execution.
Yeah.
Final thoughts on topic number 1 before we move along here. All right. Let's go to topic number 2. Shout out to Birdfinger for this topic. But, Zeb, I want to know, will these next 5 games determine what kind of season the Seahawks have? So we haven't played any NFC West games. In the next 5 games, we have 3 road games, 2 home games. 4 of these games are against the NFC. At Arizona, home against San Francisco, at Buffalo, 10 a.m. East Coast, at LA Rams, and then home against Arizona. So 4 of our 6 NFC West games are in these next 5 weeks. What does that set up for the Seahawks?
Okay, so first off, clearly this next stretch is the toughest stretch of the season on the schedule, and not just because it's against NFC West teams, which, regardless of how good those teams are, that's still going to be tougher because that's just the way it works. But it just so happens that all 3 of the other teams are actually pretty good. Some may say better than pretty good, depending on who you're talking about. And then you throw Buffalo in the mix, who seems to have slipped a little bit the last couple of weeks, but I still think that's a quality playoff caliber football team. So I do believe the next 5 games are the toughest stretch on the schedule. That being said, whether or not what happens determines what kind of season the Seahawks have, it really depends, because if you look at it, we could lose all 5 of those games. We'd still be 5-5, and looking at the rest of the schedule, I think it's a pretty safe bet we're still making the playoffs at that point. So I think that worst case scenario, if we are to really stumble over these next 5 weeks, I don't think that is the end of our season by any means, unless it's, some kind of crazy morale breaker or crazy injuries or whatever. But in reality, I do think a 3-2 or a 2-3 is probably a pretty reasonable expectation for these 5 games, which puts us at 7-3 or 8-2, and obviously in a pretty good position to make a playoff run. So, while these are going to be big, huge games, hard fought, I don't think that the outcomes of these 5 specific games is necessarily all that important to us as far as being able to make it into the playoffs and then make a run at a Super Bowl.
Ross, what about you? When you look at these next 5 games, how does that help shape what this NFL season could be for the Seahawks?
The next 5 games decide whether this is going to be a truly match season or merely a very good season.
I'm sorry. What was that?
Am I fading out?
Oh no, just yeah. Go ahead one more time.
I just feel that the next 5 games are going to decide whether we end up with a really magical season, a la 2013-14, that kind of like, whoa, or are we just going to merely have like a really good season? I don't think we're going to suddenly fade. Like Zeb says, we could lose the next 5 and still be in a decent shot for the playoffs, especially with the new playoff structure. So, but if we handle our business and play to our ability and coach to the ability, I'm not even as afraid of these 5 games as everybody else is. Like when I first heard, it seems to be a common thought in Seahawks fan circles, that the next 5 games are this gauntlet and they're kind of the season deciding and whatnot. I mean, they're NFC West games, but I hadn't particularly before that really thought of them as especially intimidating or scary. I don't think Arizona's ready. I don't think Buffalo's playing as they were. I don't think San Francisco has survived their injuries intact. I don't. The Rams, they're overperforming, but they've also been pretty vulnerable. We're 5-0. We haven't beat world beaters, but some of those teams, they have losing records because of our game. Take all those games, we beat a couple of 500 teams. I don't know. I don't. Anyway, it'll decide how the season goes, just in the sense like how magical is this going to be? Is this going to be something astounding? Could we do something we've never done before and be something like 9-1 or 8-2, 10-0, staring us in the face? In my opinion, with these next 5. Because I think this team under Carroll usually rises to the occasion. Usually. So, man, I look at these as opportunities, not as challenges. These are opportunities to stamp the season as the best ever, because it's, the timing of it, they made sure they have the best season ever when I can't go to any games.
Yeah. I'm kind of... I think, again, I'm kind of split between both of you, because my biggest concern is the fact that these are divisional games, and divisional games are always crazy. Seattle never can have, like, an easy year where they just, like, plow through the NFC West anymore. I do think that some of these teams are flawed, like the Seahawks, but for the most part, playing 4 NFC division games over 5 weeks, I think that's going to be really fun. It's going to really tell how good this division is, because this is the only division where everyone has a 500 record or better. No other division can say that. I mean, the NFC East can have a team with 3 wins or 2 wins, I think, is their division leader still. So,
yep.
And also, like the Rams, they've only beaten the NFC East. They haven't beaten any other team other than the NFC East. So how good are they when everyone expects people to just run through that division? I do think that these 5 weeks are going to determine, kind of like what you said, Ross, is this a 2013, 2014 year where we're just going to, like, be magical and make the entire season memorable? Or is this something where that, you know what, is it going to be kind of like last year where we can start really hot, but injuries and divisional games kind of take their hold and it ends up being kind of rocky? I'd much rather be an 8, 9, 10 win team going into the last 6 games of the year. And I think it's definitely possible. Because like you're saying, like if I'm biased, I'm a Seahawks fan, I'm going to think we're going to win all of these games. But if I have to give us a loss, I could see us going 3-2 easily. It's not going to be the end of the world. 3-2 is not, 2-3 is not that terrible either, because I do think that people and teams are going to gear up, because being able to play a team that's undefeated and to beat them, that's huge. That's really what Seattle did last year, and that was kind of one of their marquee games, to take down San Francisco pretty late in the year and give them their first loss.
Yeah, I mean, there'll be a lot of teams wanting to play spoiler, but
so I think San Francisco's good, man.
Yeah, but they got wiped by the Dolphins. How does that happen? I know that they changed their quarterback, but
they've had the injury bug as bad or worse than anybody, and obviously that matters both in how they've played early in the season and how they're going to play going forward. But when those guys are in and those guys are on, George Kittle and Mostert, and those receivers, those guys are all playmakers. Those are guys who, I don't know, they're monsters. Like when they're on and they're healthy enough, they don't need Garoppolo to do that much, and that team is very hard to beat when they're in that position. So
I mean, I grant you Kittle easily. Kittle scares me probably more than any other tight end I've seen in a long time. I disagree on the wide receivers. I think they're fast. They've got some people who with speed. I don't really fear any of the receivers, though.
Dude, Debo Samuel and Ayuk, those guys are good, man. I'm telling you.
But is Debo playing even hardly this year? I mean,
yeah, he's playing.
He's got a foot injury that seems to be.
I know, but if you watch their last game, like he looked 100% to me. Mostert got hurt again, but he seems like the kind of guy he's going to be in and out this season. It's just going to be that kind of season for him. But when he's in and he's playing, that's almost like a Marshawn Lynch level tough guy to bring down. Like it's, I don't know. I'm always, whenever the Niners are good, they always scare me the most. And just like in 2012 and 2013, I thought they were going to be the bane of our existence, and we were able to overcome them, even though they were actually really good. So hopefully we'll have a repeat.
Yeah,
that's the thing. They can still be really good, but at the end of the day, it's 2 games, and we play against them, and only one team's going to win, obviously. So it's not like, hey, they're really, really good, so we end up with 4 losses. I mean,
it doesn't ruin our season just because San Francisco's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Real quick, to kind of cap the end of this topic, these are the next 5 games that Seattle has after the ones we've already been talking about. At Eagles, Giants home, Jets home, at Washington football team, and then the Rams. So the next 5 after this 5, 3 NFC East teams and the last AFC East team. I think that's a pretty favorable matchup if you're looking at those 4 games afterwards. So
yeah, I mean those look like games that are a little bit easier to say that we'll probably win, but who knows? Anything could happen.
We're staring 16-0 in the eyeball, okay?
I like that attitude. I'm with it.
In the eyeball.
All right, well, let's move on to topic number 3, the Hawks Cast Corner. We always focus mostly on the NFC West, even though we talked about it a little bit. But Ross, I want to know, will the NFC West beat up on each other, preventing any one of us from getting a number 1 seed in the NFC? Do you see that happening?
No. At the beginning of the year, I thought that was a big concern. And then, like, after week 2, where everybody in this NFC West looked really, really good, I was like, that's what's going to happen. But no, San Francisco again. They still have talent, but I think it's going to be hard for them to hang with everybody with the injuries they had, that of people who can't come back. They've had some, real IR, not like the 6-week or the 3-week IR. They've had real IR people. I don't think the Rams can hang. The Cardinals are showing spirit, and they've got some super young talent that's amazing, and then Hopkins is dynamic, but they're just too flawed. And I'm going to put this out that I don't think Kyler Murray has the intangibles that make Russell Wilson special. He's got a lot of physical talent, and he'll always be fun, but I think his ceiling is much more like Michael Vick than Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
Said it.
I think that's fair. Zeb, what about you? Do you think the NFC West going to beat up on each other?
I mean, there's going to be some beating up for sure, but I think that in the end, the number one seed in the NFC is going to come down to us and the Packers, with potentially Brady and the Buccaneers vying for it. But all that we just talked about in the last topic. All that said, I think we can get through it, and I think we come out strong. And I don't think that those. It's going to be tough, but I don't think it's going to prevent us from. That's not going to be what stops us from getting the number one seed.
What do you think it takes for the Seahawks to claim the NFC West? Do they have to get to 12 wins? Or is 10, 11 going to do it?
Just the
Probably
number
12.
one or the NFC West?
Just the West. Just the West. Because here's the thing. Zeb mentions the Packers and the Bucks. I'm not sure that the NFC South is going to contend for the number one. I think the Packers have a chance to contend for the top seed of the NFC, and I think Seattle does. Those are the only two teams that I think really have a great shot for that bye week.
I think that's true, although I have a sneaking suspicion that the Buccaneers are kind of putting it together right now, and that was a lot of new stuff to get used to there. And they got probably one of the strongest, if not the strongest, defenses in the league. I don't know. They kind of popped up on my radar over the last couple of weeks as a challenger. So, but yeah, I think the Seahawks and the Packers have the inside track at this point for sure.
Huh. Do we believe in the Bears? The Bears are 5-1.
I don't believe in them.
I like Nick Foles better than Mitch Trubisky.
Well, yeah, I like cereal with sugar in it more than I like plain oatmeal too, but they have talent, right? They do have talent. Why don't we believe in them? Are they smoke and mirrors? They have a better record than Green Bay. In a sense, they've had one more game, so they're one game ahead. I would say that if I'm a Bears fan, I'm excited for this year more so than I have been in past years. Just because I think with Nick Foles, they have a better chance. Because it's a quarterback. Not every year, but many years there's a team that you never believe in. It always looks like they're getting it done with smoke and mirrors, but they get it done with smoke and mirrors all the way through January. And in the past, sometimes it's been Seattle, to be honest. But I kind of feel like the Bears have a little something going on there.
I think
they do. Obviously they're 5-1, right? So they've done something right.
And I feel like a lot of that has to do with how the NFL helps teams kind of get better. When you're the 3 seed in your division, you get to play other 3 seeds. And not every 3 seed in your conference gets better, so it's easy to kind of rise up. So, if I'm a Bears fan, I'm probably more hopeful about winning the North against a Packers team that got just embarrassed on Monday. Was that Monday night or was that a Sunday? When was that Tampa Green Bay game?
That was Sunday.
It was just a regular Sunday afternoon game?
Yeah, it was the afternoon game.
When Aaron Rodgers had that pick 6 and then 2 throws later had a tip into another interception, I was so happy. So happy.
I'm interested. I'm interested in the whole. It's going to be an interesting season.
It already is, man. I'm loving watching those AFC teams.
Yeah, the Titans, man.
Now
they
that
they got that
Patriots,
COVID strong.
yeah, now that the Patriots have been dethroned, it's good to see some of these other teams fighting for a top spot. I like it.
Yeah,
And
it's going to make the Buffalo game really fun.
Isn't it interesting to see Brady survive post-Patriot better than Belichick is post-Brady so far?
So far, yeah.
I mean, to be fair, Tom Brady got to go to whatever team he wanted to go to. Belichick still had to deal with his roster. It's not like he could just like cherry pick the best players available to him.
True, but the one time in the past he's had to play without Brady, he still did fine. He was 10-6 with what's that guy's name?
Matt Castle.
Yeah. Matt Castle. So
I don't want to slurp Brady too much because I think that the fact that he got to pick his team, where Belichick had to is essentially starting over. I don't think the Patriots are left for dead yet, but I think definitely right now for 1 year Brady has the advantage for sure.
Yeah, it's funny because I thought Brady made a bad choice. I thought it was a bad fit, and what do I know?
Well, they looked pretty awful in the first 2 weeks,
and they lost to the Bears.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're no longer anywhere near the NFC West in this topic, so let's move on.
All right. Well, let's move on. Let's go to topic number 4, and let's talk about the Arizona Cardinals. Ross, you've gotten to see some amazing games in Arizona at what is it, University of Phoenix University Stadium of
I just
Education.
Got the popcorn bowl.
Zeb, you're going to lead us off, but I want to know, how much does Kyler Murray owe Russell Wilson for getting a chance in the NFL? I looked at this. Kyler Murray is officially listed at 5'10". Russell Wilson skates by and he gets a 5'11" quite often, but he's 5'10" and like 3/4. Kyler Murray is legitly listed at 5'10".
He's only 5'9" though, right?
I believe
Murray looks like a buff 6th grader.
He does. He looks so much like a kid. Like I used to think Russell Wilson did, but like Russell Wilson looks like a real grown man next to Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray, when you're watching games, you're just like, is it okay for that junior high kid to be out there? Yeah. Isn't he going to get hurt?
Like a little dude running around. Russell looks like a man still. Kyler just looks like a kid.
Like Russell Wilson looks like he's like just like slightly further away from the camera, right? Like it's forced perspective or something. But Kyler Murray legit looks like a little like Lego figure out there.
I think Russell has, he has broad shoulders and long arms and big hands. He doesn't look like a little dude, you know. So, Kyler Murray owes a lot to Russell Wilson, and he's not the only one. Guys like Baker Mayfield and these are guys that would not have even gotten chances before, for the most part. Russell paved the way, and even not saying that Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes wouldn't have had shots, but it made them so much. People wanted them more. They made them so much more desirable because people saw the kind of things you could do with a guy that can move and throw like Russell. So, in my opinion, we had Randall Cunningham, we had Steve Young, we had Michael Vick, we had guys in the past that could move and do that kind of stuff, but it didn't become normalized, and even more than that, desired to have that kind of guy. So I think he's really changed what it means to be. This is the new prototype as a quarterback. As much as John Elway will fight it till his dying breath, the new prototype quarterback is a guy that can run and throw, and Russell Wilson is a huge part of making that happen.
Ross, what about you? What's your take on the because the thing is, the biggest reason why a guy like Kyler Murray, Johnny Manziel, Baker Mayfield are even getting looks is because of someone else who's sub 6 foot that has been talented. Lamar Jackson 6'2", Patrick Mahomes is 6'3", so they have the height to go along with that athletic ability. Um, but I mean, there was
Like,
concerns about even Murray, even if he wanted to even come out and play football.
yeah. I mean, Kyler Murray should have, when he signed his rookie contract and got his guaranteed part of it, literally should have just like handed 10% of it over to Russell Wilson. Uh, if if you really want to play football and converts to some other position, mostly just like returns pounds and was drafted around.
But do you think that's a really common thing? Someone who is as physically gifted, physically athletic, they will often be moved to a different position as opposed to being kept in the quarterback position. Is that something you think that?
It's I want to believe it happens less now, but I think it still happens. I think it happens to white athletes. I think it happens to black athletes. I think it happens to everybody, um, and a lot of it is sort of like your inbuilt bias. But I think also a lot of it's just like a function of the fact that there's 32 teams and there's 53 positions, and there's like 10,000 players who want to be professionals, and there's not space for them, and so there's you can't evaluate everybody, and not everybody. There's no minor league. There's college. College game is so different. You kind of gotta go with the patterns you see, and so that's why one of the reasons teams are so conservative. And also, when it's your career, if you make an outstanding against the grain choice and you end up wrong, then it's easy to let you. It's just human nature. It's easy to let that person go or blame that person. There's, you have to be absolutely sure you're right. You have to be absolutely sure you're making. Even when the Seahawks did draft Russell Wilson, if they hadn't signed Matt Flynn, would they have taken a third-round pick on him? If they didn't have insurance, I don't know.
Yeah.
We like to pretend that they were so, forward vision thinking, but it wasn't until they saw him in the preseason that they were confident with what they had.
You gotta bless that Matt Flynn dead arm.
Yeah, man, I was so pro Matt Flynn. But anyway, Kyler Murray, he owes a lot because it's not. I think a lot of people in the past have wanted this. People do remember, Michael Vick, but I think the success that that Russell Wilson had made it possible for scouts to stand up for what their evaluations said in the meetings when they're putting together a draft board for teams. Whereas previously, somebody would have said, yeah, maybe, but we can't afford the risk. There's only 7 rounds in the draft. There's not 12 or 15 like there used to be. And that's nice that you want that guy, but we can't afford to miss. And the chances that that guy's right are so low. There's no examples to point to that a guy under 6 foot has had success. There's not so many, not so many choices you can look at or success stories of people who are athletic, maybe not necessarily a running quarterback, because Russell Wilson's not like a running quarterback, but he's more like the Steve Young type. He's looking to throw all the time. Yeah. So,
do you think that that's like a common thing that people miss? Is that Russell Wilson came from a pro offense in Wisconsin, whereas Kyler Murray, Johnny Manziel, Baker Mayfield, they came from spread offenses. Even Lamar and Patrick Mahomes came from spread offenses. None of them play a pro offense, which I feel is a thing that is often talked about, which is why guys that no one's ever heard of in their college career until the draft, like a Carson Wentz, really get talked about and to say like, oh yeah, well this guy played in a pro offense and he's got all the prototypes, so we like him. He doesn't have to play at a big school or a big conference to be desirable.
There's so many factors that go into those things like that, and it'd be a really, really interesting book to read about which of those factors matter and which don't, and which are biases and which are just sort of logical and which makes sense and which are logical fallacies.
Right.
How much do you have to play in a pro? How much does it help you to have played in the pro style offense? How much does it matter whether you're labeled as a running quarterback versus an athletic quarterback? And how much of these are just code words for your ethnicity? It's interesting. It's a whole other topic. You could go on and on and on.
It is definitely a very much a different topic. But back to Wilson and Kyler Murray, I am really surprised at how good Kyler Murray has been. not from like a win standpoint, but from a production standpoint, because the way that he's winning or the way that he's performing, it's kind of like the fantasy dream. I have him on my fantasy team. I thought I was going to be able to get Russell Wilson. All my friends made fun of me because they thought I was going to take him, but I was going to wait until the next round. And my friend took him in the pick ahead of me, in the pick after me. So, my fault. But Kyler Murray, he's winning as much with his legs and scoring touchdowns in that way than he is throwing it in the air. Whereas Russell Wilson, for the most part, he's winning it all on his arm. He's always winning it in the air. And I think that's where Russell Wilson kind of sets himself apart from these other sub 6 foot quarterbacks. To a degree, I'm with both of you that someone in the NFL needed to see it's possible for a sub 6 foot quarterback to succeed, and that's Russell Wilson. And that means that, like, oh yeah, I'm willing to take a chance on this other person because I've seen it happen once already. But they don't want to be the first.
It didn't just have to just be like under 6 foot and winning. It had to be the style of winning as well. Like, people knew that like Michael Vick existed, but Michael Vick was really, really fun to watch. But his success in the playoffs and how far he could take his teams was limited, for whatever reasons. You had to be not just like that perfect balance of like Russell Wilson can run when you want him to run or when he needs to run, but he can also throw and he can be pinpoint. And to be honest, I'm surprised sometimes that the argument, because immediately once you have the success, it opened doors for other people, and I'm kind of surprised at that because I don't think that necessarily his success will translate to other people, because I think there's so much of it is like, how much is Russell Wilson made by his thought process that we talked about today and his positivity?
Yeah.
And if you don't have that, then your physical tools that are limited maybe matter more. And not just that, the unique things about him playing in the different systems that he played in, the baseball background that also seems to help Kyler Murray. You know, people like marveled at that slidey at last game. Like, yeah, that's because he played baseball, right?
Right.
That, you know, how many, it feels like once a game you see a play that Russell Wilson makes on the football field that he makes because he used to play baseball. Whether it's the movement or the ability to throw the ball whilst running forward. It's really awkward to throw a football while you're running straight forward, right?
That was one of my favorite plays on that final drive where he's in the pocket. The right tackle loses containment, so Russell just spins out and kind of like diagonally goes towards the line of scrimmage, almost to the sideline. And Tyler Lockett sees, oh, Russ has lost contain. I'm going to just run with him, parallel with him, and he just floats the ball and just perfectly caught. Tyler gains like another 7 yards running out of bounds.
Yeah.
That, it seems like such an easy thing, but when you watch it from the angle behind the center, it happens so fast, and that spin move is so quick. From that 30-foot view that we get on TV, it looks like, oh, God, what are you doing, defense? Like, couldn't you see that coming from a mile away? But on the angle from Russell Wilson's like vantage point just behind him, it's such a deadly play. And I don't know how he continues to just bamboozle people with that, because it happens so often.
Yeah. But again, I mean, that's why I'm just so dumbfounded that everybody, I mean, it's good because I want these other quarterbacks. It's good that there's not just like one sort of prototype now. I think there still is room for like the Peyton Manning type quarterbacks, but it's good that there's other now models for success and the like people have opened their eyes. But I do think that there is a word of caution. Like, it's not automatic. Like, Russell Wilson's very, very, very unique. So you can't just go, anybody now under 6 foot's open like the doors. You can't deny that there's some physical, that it matters. Your physicality does matter. But you can make up for it if you've got other intangibles or backgrounds or whatever, if it's all upstairs. And I don't think it's going to be there. I mean, Johnny Manziel was probably the almost immediate benefactor, and that didn't work out.
Because it was so bad. It was so bad.
I don't think Baker Mayfield's going to work out long term, personally.
You think with the season Fitzpatrick has had so far, you think Tua would be starting this week if it wasn't for Russell?
That's another good point.
That's.
I mean, I'm not sure how the Dolphins go from basically Fitzpatrick played okay in that Seattle game. Like he obviously had too many turnovers, but then he stomps the Niners, and then he loses poorly. Who did they lose to? Who did the Dolphins play last week? They got stomped again. I think it was the Falcons, right? Or no, that's the Vikings. Anyway,
Let's look it up.
As good as mine.
I'm not surprised they're making a change. I don't necessarily feel bad for Fitzpatrick because he's had a long enough career to secure a starting gig in a lot of locations.
He's won his last 2 games. He beat San Francisco and then he beat the Jets. They shut out the Jets.
They shut out the Jets?
And then they lost his starting gig.
Okay.
They shut him out. 24-0. He threw 3 touchdowns.
Okay. I'm much more confused as why that they would make that change now then.
I mean, this isn't our podcast, but I will say that it's clearly like they have their bye week this week, so it was obviously predetermined.
Yeah, it's a change. It's a change for the future.
Yeah,
they don't really expect to win this season.
They're 3-3 this year, and
right.
the Patriots aren't there, and the Bills seem vulnerable. It's very perplexing to me. I mean, like I said, I understand it because it is the future, and you can just tell the way it went down. They'd already decided before the season began. Like Ryan Fitzpatrick's going to play the first 6 weeks, then it's going to go by, then we come back with Tua. But that's, you know what, you got to be a little flexible, like free your mind or something, man. You got an opportunity here to go somewhere. Like things are clicking for you. 6 touchdowns in the past 2 games. Come on, man. Give your team a chance.
They pretty clearly rather just get Tua in there and get him playing than win this season. It's clearly more important to him.
Yeah.
It's just super weird.
Like his first game is going to be against the Rams. His first game is going to be against, Aaron Donald.
To the Wolves.
Good luck with that. And then after that, it's at Arizona. Then they're going to play the Chargers. So
iron sharpens iron.
And then they're going to be playing at Denver. Like, how's Tua going to deal with a Mile-High Stadium? First, 4th game rookie year. Okay, good luck with that, man. I feel bad. If I'm like Devontae Parker or Myles Gaskin, I'm a little bit upset today, I think.
Yeah. Crazy.
Anyway.
All right, well that's our topics for the day. Let's move on to some predictions. So, Zeb, I'm going to hit you up first. Final score, Seahawks and the Arizona Cardinals.
45-17.
That's a lot of points.
It is.
Ross, what you got?
Did he say 45-17?
Yes.
Yeah.
Jeez.
I don't know if you guys have noticed, but it's been my prediction every week.
Oh, okay, that's why.
The 45 is familiar, but not the 17.
It's Penny easily Dave Craig.
Oh, nice.
It's a good combo.
Working. I'm sticking with it.
34-24. I think I always hover around there as well.
I'm going to go 37-31. I think it's going to be a high-scoring affair, and I'm going Sean Alexander, Cam Chancellor. Seahawks win.
34. That's
37-31. I'm sorry. Yeah. I said that wrong. 37-31. Sean Alexander, Cam Chancellor.
Interesting.
Zeb, who's going to have the better MVP game? Just this game. Russell Wilson or Kyler Murray?
Russell Wilson.
Ross, who's going to have the better game?
Yeah, Russell Wilson.
I got Kyler Murray fantasy, so I think he's going to score a bunch of garbage time points and meaningless scores, but he's going to rack up yards on the ground. He's going to get a couple touchdowns because he's going to run. He's not going to be able to buy... He's not like Russell Wilson where he's going to use his legs to buy time to throw. He's just going to run to get the 10, 15 yards instead of looking for that big play. That's my take. But Russell Wilson still wins, of course. Who's going to have the better wide receiver game? DeKalen Metcalf or DeAndre Hopkins at Zeb?
Damn it, Hopkins.
Hopkins? Okay. Ross?
Sadly, I agree.
I'm going to go with Metcalf. Metcalf has been on fire. I mean,
Yes.
I'm trying to think of a player that has exceeded my expectations so quickly. Maybe Tyler Lockett in his first year, but DK Metcalf's elevation in year 2.
Doug Baldwin.
What was that?
Doug Baldwin back in the day.
Dougie.
Yeah, but I thought Doug was pretty great in his first year. He led the team in every receiving category, so...
Yeah, but there was a jump. Second year jump.
I agree. I mean,
Cam Chancellor?
Going from 15 to 89 was the difference. Cam Chancellor didn't get a play in his first year, so I don't want to... He was playing behind Lawyer Malloy at the safety position, so I think that's a little bit unfair. But I would say DK, who started, I think over 10 games his rookie year, and then broke a couple rookie records. I'm very impressed with how he is. I'm really excited for his future with Russ. Zeb, who's going to have more sacks? Jamal Adams did not practice today, but he is a strong go for the game. Jamal Adams, the Seahawks linebacker core, or the Seahawks defensive line? Who's going to get more sacks?
I mean, Jamal Adams is probably the only guy fast enough to actually catch the kid, so I'll go with him.
Ross, what about you?
Defensive line. Going to surprise him.
Defensive line? Man, they're going to play a fast defensive line then.
Is Snacks playing?
We don't know that yet. He's practicing.
I think we should keep him out one more week.
He's already turned down another team to join their active roster to stay on the Seahawks practice squad.
Yeah, 2 teams.
It's pretty crazy. I'm going to go with the Seahawks linebacker core. I think that this is a game where Bobby's mental ability is really going to shine, and I see him being able to take Kyler Murray down. He hasn't really been given a chance, but I think that this is a good game for that. Zeb, over under 25.5 Seahawk rushing attempts. This year, the Seahawks are averaging 23 point something rushing attempts per game. Are we going to eclipse 25.5?
I'll go under.
Go under. Ross, what about you?
Over.
Over?
Nice.
I think this is going to be a game where they're going to try and run to try and control and try and limit Kyler Murray, but then the game just goes out of hand and we're like, no, we're actually really good at throwing the ball, so we're going to just throw it everywhere. They're going to get 20 rushing attempts, so they're going to be well under. And the final prediction for the day, Zeb, the Seahawks over-under are going to have 1.5 field goal attempts. They've had 2 for the entire year. Which I didn't catch that. What'd you say?
Oh, under.
Under? Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry for all those Jason Meyer fantasy fans out there. Ross, what
I
about
know.
you?
God, what a rip.
Ross,
I
what
kept
about you?
taking them earlier in the season, like going, well, this will be the week they have to go for field goals. I don't do that anymore. It's going to be under as well. It's mostly touchdowns. I have them as 1 field goal. So.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about how they can get there to 30.
Over. Sorry, over.
Yeah, to get to 37
31
points, I'm trying to think about how they would actually get that.
That's 3 field goals and 4 touchdowns, man.
Yeah, so I guess by default I have to go over unless I say it's 5 touchdowns and 1 safety.
Yeah.
I think that's more fun.
touchdowns,
I'm going to take that. 5 touchdowns and 1 safety. I'm going to go with the under.
I have one other over under for you guys.
Okay, hit us.
6.5. Okay. The amount of times Kyler Murray makes KJ Wright or Cody Barton look like they're not actually moving.
Ooh, that's a lot. I'm going to say under. I think if it were just Cody Barton and you gave me a little bit lower, I'd probably take the over, but 6.5 between both of them, that's a lot. I'm going to have to go under.
I feel like KJ's playing the best football of his career. So.
Playing great, but he's not catching Kyler.
No. I don't think that's happening either.
But he'll just take the angles, right? It's all about the angles. Make me feel better. I just picked him up as my IDP guy.
No, he's going to do great. He's gonna break up some screens and he's going to hit some guys behind the line of scrimmage. But
is he going to have a better interception than what he had in that game?
Can you have a better interception than that game?
Dude, I was like, he can catch.
That was amazing. He just grabbed it out of the air.
I was so sure he couldn't catch because he'd have like 5 interceptions this season if he could.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna go with the under as well because, like you said, if it was just Barton, man, that guy's not progressing.
He's got
I
that
gotta
straight
be-
line hit power, but he cannot move side to side.
No, and as Mr. Miyagi said, side to side is important. So
Always look at eye.
always look side to side.
And gentlemen, that is our podcast for the day. Time for some shout outs.
Shout out to Joe
Shout
Gunn,
out.
who gave me the Kyler Murray looks like a buff 6th grader line.
It's a good one.
Shout out to everybody who's already voted. Shout out to Tony and Birdfinger for listening.
I agree.
Yeah.
I want to double up on Ross. Shout out to the voters out there. Shout out to Tony and to Birdfinger. Do you have more?
And-
I apologize.
I got one more. Shout out to my taxi driver yesterday for like absolutely freaking out when I coughed once.
Ooh.
Dick. I coughed once, and that dude like turned back at me wide-eyed, and then like rolled all the windows in the taxi down. It's pretty cold here already, and he rolled all his windows down. And I just had like this image of him going home to his wife that night, just going like, "This crazy foreigner was dying of fever, and Ebola in my taxi, and he came in." And I'm like, dude, I coughed once, and it wasn't like a cough even from a sick. I swallowed some saliva wrong, man. But that dude looked like deadly afraid.
That's cold
So
blooded.
way to go, man. Way to panic.
Cold blooded. Shout out to Zeb and to Ross for being great podcasters. Shout out to Tony and Birdfinger one more time. Check us out at hawkscast.com, at Twitter, at Seahawks Podcast, at Seahawks Forum. We're the Hawkscast Podcast. With me is Zeb and Ross. I'm Sam, and we want to wish you a Go Hawks.
Oh, Hawks.
The Hawks.